Hey guys, that's Vaughn82, and today I have put together a video with avid comic book collectors and respected members of the comic book community discussing the best advice that they've been given, maybe the best advice that they would give someone pertaining to the comic book hobby. First up, we have Cole from Cole's Comic Claims. He's got some pretty good stuff to share with us, so let's see what Cole has to say.
What is going on? I am Cole, and thank you for having me. When it comes down to the question, what would I recommend to people getting into the hobby and collecting? So I've got two tips that I'm going to give. The first one is never really buy things just based on lists, right? I would say find what you want and collect what you want. I know personally with me, some of the stuff that I like is kind of more oddball. I know that, me and you both have been looking for Toxic Avenger comics, and while sometimes that has, raised on people's lists because the movie is coming out, it has also fluctuated back down. Most of the time, I think when you're going for some of these key books in particular, if it becomes hot, it's going to be something that's going to probably be worth more money at that given point in time than it will be 2 to 3 months down the line. Sometimes that is not always true, but if it is a book that you're like only mildly interested in, normally I think waiting it out can, usually help with that. And the second piece of advice that I will have is that if you're looking to read these comics and get more into the reading of comics, always utilize your local library. I love saying that, and I think that the library is great. You can go there. Mine has a huge selection of both physical books, but they also have Hoopla, which, if you do not know what Hoopla is a digital platform that you can use to read digital comics for free. My library has 10 checkouts a month, and I can end up going in and getting those free of charge, and they just come straight onto my tablet. I don't even have to go into the library to get them. But I actually made a video about a month or two ago about some of my top recommendations for new comic book readers. So if you would like to learn a little bit more, make sure to check out my page over at Cole's Comics Claim, and you can get a few other tips. But I would say for answering this question, as fun, those would be the two things that I would recommend. So let me know what you think about those two tips.
Thank you, Cole, for those words. And definitely I like the idea of utilizing your local library. Now, next up, we have my brother, Marcus, or you may know him as Circumstances, over on YouTube, the meme god, the comic book memes. I'm very interested to see what he has to say. So let's see what Marcus has to say about it.
What up, y'all? My homie Scotty Vaughn, representing Tennessee, asked me to give out the best advice I've been given about comic book collecting, and I wanted to cheat and give really two pieces of advice. First advice is from JP's Budget Collecting, who does a 6-month look back on the top 10 books that we see every week that we cover and get hype about. It does a look back on those books that were on the list 6 months ago, and it evaluates the price that they were at when they were on the list and the price that they're at now. And if you look at that 6 months later, you will see 85 to 95% of the time, the book is worth less money 6 months later than it was when it was on the list. So the best piece of advice is to pay attention to JP's Budget Collecting look back and shop not on the Hot 10 list, but on the 6 months look back list at the Hot 10s. It's always the better way to go. If you still want that book in 6 months, then it's worth it to go get it because it'll be much less. The other piece of advice I would give is I followed a guy on Twitter who lived both in Japan and America, and he would often comment on the differences between the two cultures. And one thing he said that stuck out to me was that when the Japanese get on social media, they talk about the things that they love. And when Americans get on social media, they talk about the things that they hate. And my advice would be, when it comes to comic book collecting, this is a hobby. This is supposed to be fun. So focus on what you love and have apathy for the things that you hate, right? Have fun. We're all grown-ups collecting comics, so let's never forget that, and let's just remember to have fun. All right, shout out to my homie Scotty Vaughn on his year on YouTube. Really excited to see him still going and still trying to come up with new, interesting content for us to all consume. So definitely check him out, and peace, comic book fan.
And I 100% agree with Marcus. JP's Budget Collecting is an awesome comic book channel. It's a channel that I've watched for a long time. It is a great way to keep up with how books are doing maybe 6 months down the road. He does this thing where He judges whether the books are dumpster fire or cash, trash. It's a really cool thing that he does on the show. Definitely worth checking out. And also check out Marcus Circumstances on YouTube, Instagram, and also on Hive now. Next up, we have Mike from Evil's Comics. Let's see what Mike has to say.
Hey, I'm Evil Mike from Evil's Comics, and I was asked by S. Vaughn82 or Scott, what was the best advice I could give to a new collector or a collector in general? And my best advice to anybody out there would be follow your excitement. Whatever excites you in this hobby, I would stick to that. You know, if you're reading storylines that just aren't exciting or whatever, don't feel obligated to stick with those stories. You know, I try and follow, you know, what interests me, and I do step out of my box, but I still have a tendency to stay to things that I know that I'm going to enjoy and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean I don't step outside the box. But the best advice I can give to any collector out there is, and it doesn't matter how you collect, I don't think there's a wrong or a right way to collect, but my best advice is follow your excitement. For me, it's always like word of mouth or art, but follow that excitement.
I like that. Mike's right. There is no right or wrong way to collect. Collect what excites you, what gets you in your excitement. You can never go wrong, and you're the one that's stuck with those books at the end of the day. Next up, we have Brian LCS, a very respected member of the community, the president of the CBC Awards, and he does some great content over on his YouTube channel, so be sure to check him out. Brian, what do you have to say about this?
Hey YouTube, Brian LCS with some tips for you if you're getting back into comic book collecting or maybe collecting for the first time. I've got two tips. I jumped back into collecting about 3 years ago, and I wish I would have slowed down a little bit and maybe learned a little bit more. So the two things that I would recommend for you is to leverage your local library. Your library has a number of comic books, whether it's graphic novels, trade paperbacks. You can go to the library and check these books out and kind of start to read, maybe catch up on some stories. Or if, like I said, if you're new, maybe figure out which characters you like without spending any money at all. So it's a great way to get introduced to, back in or new and not have to come out of pocket with any cost. Now, one of the great features of a local library is that most libraries, you have the ability to digitally get access to books. So you don't even need to go to the library. You can do this from a computer or a tablet or from your phone and get access. You must have a library card. You must be a member of the library, but you don't need to physically go to the library. You could, like I said, you can download or will have access to the books. You don't. I don't think most cases you don't download, but you can have access to the books on like I said, tablet, computer, phone, and then the books get returned to the library in a certain period of time. So you don't even have to make the trip there. You can do it all remotely. So that's one of the great features. My second tip would be, find a local comic shop and go in and speak to the staff there. I think that serves the purpose for two things, right? It'll give you a sense for what type of shop this is. If the staff or the owner is very helpful, then that might be a place that you want to buy some books. If they're not, well, then maybe you need to find some another shop who's a little bit more friendly. Um, but I think they're a great resource, right? This is their business. They know comic books. They, look at the new books coming in every week, and so they can kind of help direct you if you need some help with, some storylines that you may be interested in or some characters. Obviously, they're there to make money, and so they should be helpful. I have never run into an issue in a local comic shop. If I've asked questions, I usually get answers. I've heard a few stories where you run into a cranky staff member or an owner, but I don't think that's the case for most shops. But go check them out, ask them some questions, and they should be able to help you. So those are my tips. Your local library is a great resource for comic book material without spending any money, and find a comic shop and speak to the staff and see what they can recommend, and I'm sure there'll be more than helpful. So hope these tips were helpful.
Utilize your local library, touching back on what Cole said. I love that, Brian. And also going in and learning the local comic book shops around you, meeting the staff, figuring out what's a good fit for you, and who knows, you may even make some friends in the process. Now, next up, we have Travis, or you may know him as TM Nerdy, way up north in Canada. So let's see what Travis has to say.
Hey everyone, TM here. Scott hit me up and asked me if I could give some advice to some people coming into this comic community for collecting and reading purposes. And the best advice that I could give is collect what you want. I know, it's cliche, but hear me out. You know you better than anybody else. So nobody's going to tell you that you should collect this comic over a comic that you actually would like to collect. So always go with what you love. Take my boy Roscoe, for instance. He collects everything 90s cartoons. Why? Because he loves 90s cartoons. It's wrapped up in a bow with perfect art and brings him back to his childhood. Me, I love everything Beast Wars. So when that Beast Wars comic came out, I was collecting every single comic because Beast Wars was my childhood and it was near and dear to my heart. Now, for reading purposes, I could point you in the right direction to some people that know their stuff and been reading for years or have been reading a lot in the last little bit. That's Legion of Comics. Great channel, mostly knows his DC stuff, but don't let it fool you because he does know some Marvel knowledge. John's Comics with Kids, he gets together every Saturday with his daughters to talk about comics they have been reading that they loved. So it's definitely a great channel to go check out for all ages. No Good Comics, he does a show with John's Comics with Kids going back and looking at some of the X-Men with Omni X-Men. Comics Will Break Your Heart, they get together every week. That's Jennifer and that comic girl Mars to talk about what they've read and what they've been loving every single week. So there's some great advice for you for collecting purposes and reading purposes. And don't feel bad to ask questions because we want this community to grow. We want this fandom to grow, so we'll be here with open arms to give you the best advice that we can give. So on behalf of the comic community, I welcome you guys. I can't wait to talk comics with you.
Thank you, Travis. You guys be sure to go follow TM Nerdy on Instagram. Check him out on YouTube and over on Hive as well. Now, the advice that I would have to offer is people will come up to me all the time and tell me, how do you find all these cool books? Or tell me, you find cool books it seems like you find cool books every time you go. And what they don't see is the 9 out of 10 trips that I make digging through bins that I come up with nothing but filler issues. My advice would be consistency. I look for books every chance that I get, every spare chance. And like I said before, 9 out of 10 times I may come up with nothing but maybe some fillers for a run. But that one time when I score, it makes it all worth it. It makes all the time invested worth it. That excitement, that's what I cling to. That's what I love about the hobby. And that would be one of the things that I would say. Another thing, tell everyone that you collect. Be the dorky comic book guy. You never know who has comic books sitting in their closet who is just looking for someone to give them away to, trying to find the right person, and just want to get them out of their house. I've become that guy at work. I am the comic book guy, and because of that, people bring me books all the time. That's something that I learned early on from Comic Tom on Comic Tom 101 on YouTube, and it's a trick that has worked a lot for me. And also, check for comics in unusual places, antique markets, flea markets, anywhere, and always ask for comics. Even if you don't see comics, they may have them stashed under a table. There's been so many times that I've been in a flea market that they have had comics, and I never would have known if I didn't ask because they had them stashed under a table out of the way of foot traffic. So follow those tips, and you'll definitely do a little bit better with your collecting. I really appreciate everyone that commented in this video. Stay tuned for part 2. Please like and subscribe so that you'll be notified when that comes up. And please go follow Brian LCS, go follow Circumstances, TM Nerdy, Evil's Comics, and Cole's Comic Collects. And go follow them, go sub them up on YouTube, Instagram, Hive, all the social media. Thanks, guys, and until next time, peace.